Into Sports Drive once again, Preston Moore. My next guest is a guest that, if you've been watching the show the last few days, has been a recurring face. He's had a different jersey on every single time that we've had him on. It's Jake Boesen of the Sports Nerds here in Amarillo. Jake, how are you doing?
Doing great. I got to ask a favor of you, my man. As much as I love coming on with you all the times, because I'll take any excuse I can watching sports, you got to have me batting leadoff or something, because you had me after Josh Lynn, the head football coach for WT, and now Lombard down in Canyon. I mean, come on. You expect me to compete with those guys? Those guys, let's be real, man.
I know you got some heavy hitters coming in before you. We'll have you next time we have you on. We'll have you right at the top of the hour, 3:00. You'll be the first guest. How about that?
Yeah, no pressure on me or anything after following up those guys. Good Lord.
Well, let's talk a little bit of national sports. We spent this entire show talking about high school basketball, but there's some interesting stuff going on nationwide. Today, obviously, J.J. Watt announcing his retirement, one of the best defensive players in the history of the game, I would say. What do you make of this? You know, his legacy is going to be just a really, really strong legacy. And, you know, what do you think, you know, when it comes to J.J. Watt and his entire career? How do you think we're going to remember him as far as, you know, all time goes, this being his last season?
I think it's very rare in not just football, but all of professional sports nowadays, where you have a true superstar on the field in every sense of the word, a three-time defensive player of the year, one of only three players, including himself, to do that before, including Aaron Donald and, by the way, Lawrence Taylor. So that's pretty good company to be in. Yeah. You're either of those guys. But as good as he was on the field, he may have been a better man off the field. Those Texans fans around the area, as few and far between as they may be up in Amarillo, because we know the Cowboys kind of dominate around that area. But we remember when Harvey came through all those years ago, J.J. Watt donated millions and millions of his own dollars, his own income, his own hard-earned money out there to help the community when others around the area weren't doing anywhere close to it. He was a leader on the field for teams. He was a leader in the locker room for teams. He was a guy that communities around the area, whether it was Houston, whether it was Texas as a whole, whether it was even going down to Arizona and Glendale and around Phoenix and all of those areas, he was the definition of a good man and a great player. He was, and to say he was a good man, not even doing him enough justice. He was an amazing individual. Like I said, donated millions of dollars, hundreds of hours of his own time in off seasons, and even during regular seasons when he was injured, to go and do Make-A-Wish, to help out with kids. He saw how important it was to invest in your communities, to invest in the youth. And for as great as he was on the field, he has over 100 sacks. He's the only player in league history ever to have multiple 20-sack seasons or more. He had 2 seasons with 20 and a half sacks, and that was nearly back-to-back. His peak between 2012 and 2015 is maybe one of the most dominant runs we've ever seen from a defensive player. And more impressively, he was able to do it at both the edge and the inside. He was a great individual on the field, but maybe even better off the field. And I think we should remember him equally for both. He did a great things for those Houston teams. Not a lot of playoff success, but he was the best player arguably in franchise history. And then what he did for the community absolutely deserves to be remembered. He should be a Hall of Famer, first ballot, no question in my mind.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The legacy he leaves on the game will be long remembered. He's one of those players that I really would have liked to see a ring. One of those players that's great on the field, and you mentioned great off the field, that you really you want to see guys like that win a ring. I don't think it's necessarily in the cards for the Cardinals this season, but who knows? I don't think they're eliminated from playoff contention.
They have been, actually.
Never mind. Never mind then. Forget everything I just said. J.J. Watt, unfortunately, will not win a ring, but I certainly would have liked to see it. But definitely.
But when you look at the entire career of a lot of players, you say at the end, if they don't get that ring, but what if? You know, it seems incomplete. J.J. Watt is one of those few individuals, I think, in league history and certainly in recent memory where he may not have a ring, but that was the only thing he never got. And honestly, I think he's all right stepping away. We've seen guys in recent memory step away due to injuries, and he has had a terrible, terrible string these past couple of years, whether it was his time ending in Houston, whether it was the shoulder pectoral issues when he got to Arizona. He has not been able to stay healthy. So obviously, best of luck to him as he goes forward. And the best part is, The on the field stuff may not still be going on in these next couple of years, but he's always going to be doing that charity work. He's always going to be
Right.
helping out in communities. And frankly, I would love to see him in a front office role for an outreach or PR, if nothing else, as far as the actual on field stuff with the team. He's a guy that I think would do really, really well representing, if nothing else, the league as part of the league office with Roger Goodell. I think he definitely would do great with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope he sticks around and is still somewhat in the public sphere, in the public eye, doing something involved with the NFL, especially with that charity work as well. He is one of the better men to ever play in the National Football League, so he will be sorely missed, but obviously completely understandable with the injuries that he's struggled with over the last couple seasons. But yes, absolutely one of the best players to play. I want to switch over now over to basketball a little bit because there's been some talk, I think, especially in the last week, about the MVP conversation. Early in the season, for a while, it seemed like Luka Doncic was going to be the one. It seemed like this is his year. You know, he's going to get it. He's been one of the favorites for most of his career, but never had that edge over everybody else. And it seemed like this might be the year. It's looking a little bit more like a toss-up now, especially after the last week. Nikola Jokic is playing out of his mind. Unstoppable basketball. Just 2 days ago on Christmas, 41 points, 15 rebounds, 15 assists. That's hardly ever been done. I mean, he's putting up Wilt Chamberlain-esque numbers in 2022. He's already won it twice. Who's your MVP pick if you had to pick, not necessarily right now, not necessarily a mid-season MVP, but if you had to pick who's going to win it at the end of the season, who would you go with?
See, those are two different questions, and I'm glad you phrased it that way because oftentimes a lot of sports media doesn't do it that way.
Yeah.
The two words you're going to hear thrown around more than anything when it comes in reference to that award this year is going to be voters' fatigue. It's why Giannis didn't win it 2 straight years, 3 straight years, whatever it was, in 19, 20, and then 21 again. Why Jokic won his first, you could argue, in those years. My thing has always been the MVP race isn't based on what players have done in seasons previous or what we're expecting players to do in seasons in ahead. It's based on the players, the individuals, what they're doing in the vacuum that we call the NBA season of the 2022-2023 season.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at just this season, I don't care who's won it in the past. I don't care who's the favorites 5 years down the road. Nikola Jokic has been the MVP once again when you talk about value. Now, again, the question of value is determined differently for everybody. I'm curious to hear yours. When I hear value, when I think most valuable player, I think the player that if he weren't on that team, they would collapse like a house of cards. And the past 2 years, that has been the Denver Nuggets. Looking, lo and behold, they're sitting at the number 1 seed again. Murray has not been nearly pre-bubble, even going into bubble injury, pre-injury. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. has been kind of iffy here and there. KCP can hit a clutch bucket here and there every once in a while. Aaron Gordon is absolutely living above the rim right now. He destroyed, I don't even remember who that was on that dunk the other night in that Christmas Day overtime win.
Yeah.
But it all goes through Jokic. He is the single most dominant force at the center position we see right now. And that includes guys like Joel Embiid, who is also in that same conversation. But if you're asking me who I think it is come end of season, I would probably put money down on a guy like Jason Tatum or a guy like Luka Doncic, whether you like it or not. And again, I don't define value this way, but some people define most valuable as best player, best team. Those are phrases that get thrown around every single year. I'm tired of it. That's why Devin Booker was in the race a couple years ago. Absolutely shouldn't have been. Jason Tatum, though, even if he wasn't on this team, they would be fantastic. If you take him away, they'd be a little bit worse. But he's putting up unprecedented numbers. He's doing a great job out there, again, for the best team in the entire league up there with Giannis and those Bucks over there. Don't count Giannis out. But if I had to put money down on somebody, I'd probably put Doncic or Tatum. I'm a big Jokic guy, but for me, voters' fatigue isn't really going to play into it. But everybody else, I can't speak for them. It probably will.
Yeah, I fully agree. We'll talk a little bit more about that right after the break. We're going to take a quick couple minute break and be right back with more Sports Drive to wrap things up here at the end of the hour. Stay tuned. Stick with us.